Imagine waking up one morning to find out that Canada has officially become the 51st state of the United States. You pour your coffee, turn on the news, and there it is, splashed all over the headlines. Canada joins the Union. At first, it sounds like a plot twist from a sitcom, right? But let's dive into this wild idea and explore what it would mean for both Canada and the United States, and of course, for the world. First off, let's talk about geography. Canada is massive. It's the second largest country in the world, after Russia. So if Canada became a state, the United States would suddenly be a whole lot bigger. Imagine the logistical challenges. The time zones alone would be a nightmare. We already have enough trouble keeping track of when to call our friends in California or New York. Now, add in Alberta and Newfoundland. Would we have to start using a new system of time? Would we have to invent a new term for Eastern Standard Time that includes Canada? Now, let's think about the cultural implications. Canada has a rich tapestry of cultures, languages, and traditions. French and English are both official languages there, and the Indigenous cultures are deeply woven into the fabric of Canadian identity. If Canada became a state, how would that impact the cultural landscape of the U.S.? Would we see a surge in poutine restaurants popping up in every corner of America? Would we start celebrating Canada Day alongside the 4th of July? Imagine the fireworks, both countries lighting up the sky in unison. It could be a beautiful blend of cultures, but it could also lead to some serious debates about identity. What does it mean to be Canadian? What does it mean to be American? Speaking of debates, let's touch on politics. Canada has a parliamentary system, while the U.S. operates under a federal system. How would that transition work? Would we have to rewrite the Constitution? Would Canadians need to learn about the Electoral College? And what about healthcare? Canada has a universal healthcare system that many Americans admire but also debate. Would there be a push to adopt a similar system in the U.S.? The conversations around healthcare alone could spark a political revolution. Imagine the town hall meetings. But let's not forget about the economy. Canada is rich in natural resources, oil, timber, minerals. If Canada became a state, how would that affect trade agreements? Would we see a shift in job markets? Would American companies start investing more in Canadian industries? And let's talk about taxes. Would Americans suddenly have to pay Canadian taxes? Or would Canadians have to adapt to the American tax system? It's a tangled web of economics that could either boost the economy or create a financial mess. And what about the environment? Canada is known for its stunning landscapes, from the Rocky Mountains to the vast boreal forests. If Canada joined the U.S., would we see a shift in environmental policies? Would there be a greater push for conservation efforts? Or would we see more corporate interests pushing for resource extraction? The fate of the environment could hang in the balance, depending on how policies are shaped in this new political landscape. Let's also consider sports. Canadians take their hockey seriously, and Americans have their football, baseball, and basketball. Would the NHL merge with the NFL? Imagine a Super Bowl that pits the best hockey players against the top American football teams. The rivalries would be intense. And what about the Olympics? Would Canada have to compete as part of Team USA? Just think of the medal counts. Now, let's get a bit more personal. How would everyday Canadians feel about this change? Would they embrace their new identity as Americans, or would there be a sense of loss? Picture the conversations over backyard barbecues. Hey, do you remember when we were just Canada? Yeah, but now we're part of something bigger. The emotional weight of such a transition could be significant. And what about the Americans? How would they react to Canada joining the Union? Would there be excitement, or would there be resistance? Would some Americans feel threatened by the influx of Canadian culture, or would they embrace it? We've seen how divided opinions can get over immigration and cultural integration. It's a complex issue that could lead to some serious debates on both sides of the border. Let's not forget about the Canadian wilderness. Would Americans flock to Canada for outdoor adventures? Would we see an influx of tourists trying to hike the Rockies or canoe in Algonquin Park? The tourism industry could boom, but it could also lead to over-tourism, threatening the very landscapes that make Canada so beautiful. And what about the arts? Canada has produced some of the world's most talented artists, musicians, and filmmakers. Would they finally get the recognition they deserve in the U.S., or would they be overshadowed by Hollywood? Would we see a new wave of Canadian influence in American pop culture? Just think of the music festivals that could emerge, blending the best of both worlds. In the end, the idea of Canada becoming the 51st state of America is a fascinating thought experiment. It raises questions about identity, culture, politics, and economics that are deeply relevant today. It's a conversation starter, a way to reflect on what it means to belong to a nation. Whether you're Canadian, American, or somewhere in between, this hypothetical scenario invites us to think critically about our identity and ponder this wild idea. Remember that the world is full of possibilities. And who knows? Maybe one day we'll look back at this conversation and laugh, thinking, can you believe we actually considered that? Or maybe we'll see it as a turning point in our shared history. Either way, it's a journey worth taking,